All right, perfect. So just a couple announcements just to recap the week. Um, so last week we covered exercises 12 through 14. You had homework due over them on Sunday, and then your video quiz was due Sunday night as well. So I know your GSA should be working on those. It does take a little bit of time to kind of watch through those and get those grades put in. So just give them a little bit of time on that, but they should be done within the week. But from all the ones I've seen so far from like my sections, people are doing really well and getting the points as long as you follow the instructions I gave you. So we're changing a couple of things with the points for the rest of the semester and like I'm adding in a quiz. So I talked about this on my announcement, but I just want to go over it just so there's no confusion and so everyone's on the same page. Okay. So originally a practical 3, like your other practicals, was going to be worth 150 points. But since it was online, I didn't want to make the practical worth that much. So I took 30 points off of it and I made another quiz. Okay, so I think last week I mentioned like a short paper that you would write. Okay, so that's going to be pushed back like a week. So that's going to be like next week's quiz. So for this week, you'll have a 30-point quiz just over what we talk about today. So just over exercises 15 and 16, right from the PowerPoint. And then there are a couple extra things that you'll want to know, but I'll tell you what those are going to be. Okay, so it's 24 questions, I think. 24 questions, 30 points. The reason those numbers are kind of off is because a couple of those questions had multiple parts to it. And so, but there are 30 points. You'll have 15 minutes to do it. And if you are ODOS, then you need to contact me or your GSA because we'll have to change yours for that time. Okay, so if you do that, if you have that, just please do that as soon as possible because if you start the quiz, then we can't like go back and change that. Okay, so we just have to know and we can do that for the practical as well. All right, so yeah, so this quiz would just be questions on Blackboard, similar to the kinds of questions you would have like on an in-person quiz. And it'll be 30 points. And then you will have your homework due for exercises 15 and 16. That'll be due Sunday night. And again, that'll be due to your GSA in their email. The quiz will also be due on Sunday night. And if you wait till past the deadline, you won't be able to start the quiz. Or if you're in the middle of taking it and it passes the deadline, it'll automatically submit, okay? So please don't wait to the last minute for that because these should be for you, okay? Also, some people have asked me about like using notes and stuff. I mean, obviously this is an online class, so you're welcome to use your resources, your PowerPoints, your book, whatever. But I definitely would study the material before you take the quiz. Just go over it, make sure that you understand it, okay? You don't want to be spending all of that time just searching through your notes, searching through your PowerPoint, because a couple of those questions you have to read and think about, okay? And type a couple of things out. Just be kind of prepared when you're walking into that, okay? So if anyone has any questions about that, just let me know. You can type it in the chat or you can send me an email. That's totally fine. Okay, so I guess we will go ahead and start lecture now. So I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint and share that on my screen with y'all. Awesome. I also added in some fun memes I've seen in the last week just to make things more fun, just to give you a laugh maybe while you're going through this lecture. All right, so I hope you enjoy them. All right, or if you find some memes, see some memes, you're like, oh wow, that would be really great in my lab, send it to me and I may put it on the lecture. for next week. Okay, so exercises 15 and 16, we'll be talking about reflexes, reflex physiology. Okay, it's not a ton of material. We're not going super in depth on it. Okay, so first we want to define a reflex. So a reflex is just going to be a really simple automatic response to some type of stimulus we encounter. Okay, and so most of our reflexes have the purpose of protection, helping us to carry out routine things that we do on a day-to-day basis, or maintaining our balance and posture. Okay, so we have what's called the reflex arc. All right, and there are 5 steps to that, and you definitely want to know these steps. That's going to be really important for you. All right, and so I have this picture over here on my PowerPoint. You don't have to know this picture, but it gives you a really good visual of kind of what's going on. Okay, and you do want to know not just those steps, but kind of what is going on as we're talking about it. Okay, so we start with some type of stimulus, and that's going to start the reflex arc. Okay, so we have our receptor, all right, that's picking up on that stimulus, and then that sensory information is going to be sent to the spinal cord by this afferent neuron. So afferent neurons are going to be for sensory. The afferent is always sensory. Okay, and then we have integration that's going to occur in the spinal cord or in the brain. And then that's going to be kind of processing that information. And then we're going to have some type of motor response by our efferent neurons. So efferent neurons will always be motor. All right. And then that's going to send that response back to the effector. So step 5. So the effector is just whatever is receiving that message and responding to the stimulus. So in this example of the patellar reflex, it would be these muscles right here. Okay, those would be the effector. All right, so just keep this in mind, keep kind of these steps in mind. That would be a good picture to refer back to. But I'm not gonna like have this picture on like a quiz or the practical and ask you to label it, okay? Okay, so we can divide our reflexes into categories based on like a few different things. So first, we'll look at monosynaptic versus polysynaptic. So mono, we can think of mono versus poly, meaning one versus many. And then synaptic, we know that's going to have to do with neurons, all right? So whether it's mono or polysynaptic is going to be, of course, based on the number of neurons that are involved. And we do see that most of our reflexes are polysynaptic, and they're going to have at least one interneuron. And our monosynaptic reflexes are going to be, since there are less neurons, that signal is going to be processed quicker throughout the body. Okay, so when I say an interneuron, that just simply means that there's like a neuron in between your afferent and efferent neurons. So right here we have an interneuron that's labeled. All right, so you'd have your afferent neuron, interneuron, efferent neuron. Okay, and so with our polysynaptic neurons, there's at least one of those interneurons, but could be, you know, there could be way more than one. All right. So we can also divide our reflexes up based on what part of the body that they are affecting. So we have somatic versus autonomic. Our somatic are going to be voluntary and our autonomic are going to be involuntary. So our somatic is going to be related to our skeletal muscles, and our autonomic is going to be related to smooth muscles, glands, and visceral organs. All right. You definitely want to know this information. This will be on your quiz and your practical. All right. So that's important. And then we have what are called acquired reflexes. And these are some things that are learned through experience. Okay. So things that you may not, that you may learn how to do and then you get a lot better at, or you know, you do these things so much that you may not even think about them. Like an example would be, okay, so with driving, you every time you get in the car, you're not thinking, oh my goodness, like where is my turn signal? Oh, how do I do it left and right? Or, I mean, some people don't know what turn signals are, obviously, because they don't use them. But for those of us who know how to drive, we know where our turn signal is, and we don't have to like consciously think about it when we're going to turn. We just flip that up or down, okay? Another thing would be, typing or texting, we remember where the keys are, we remember where those letters are, so you don't have to consciously think about that. All right. One of your activities that you would have been doing if you had actually been this week was for looking at acquired reflexes. And so one person in your group would hold like a meter stick up for you, and you would just be catching it. And then as time went on, you would just catch it quicker and quicker. All right. So that's one of the activities that you would have done if you had been in class. All right, so just looking at some receptors that help us with our reflexes and, with managing these. We have some general versus receptors and stimuli. So our general stimuli, these are going to be things like temperature, pH, and pressure. And when we're thinking about special stimuli or special senses, that's going to be vision, hearing, equilibrium or balance, taste, and smell. And we'll be talking about all of those next week. That'll be a fun, relatively fun lecture. Okay, so we just want to remember the difference between those, and then we classify these in a couple different ways. So we have our exteroceptors and our interoceptors. And so our exteroceptors are monitoring our external conditions, and our interoceptors are monitoring our internal conditions. And so when we think about external conditions, that's going to be things like touch, pain, heat, or cold. And then internal conditions will be related to our blood pH, which is monitored by chemoreceptors, our visceral organs, which is monitored by our visceral stress receptors, and proprioceptors, which are going to monitor our postural information. All right, so just talking about a few different receptors. Okay, this should be all review for you because we did discuss this in exercise 5. I know that feels like so long ago. It does for me. I feel like it's been like 5 months. So it feels like it's been a while since the beginning of the semester, but hopefully this is review for you. So our main receptors are going to be our Merkel cells, our Meissner's corpuscles, and our Pacinian corpuscles. But we also have these free nerve endings that are going to be associated with our Merkel cells. So they're going to be placed near those. Okay, our Merkel cells are going to be detecting light touch, and our free nerve endings are really going to be for detecting pain. All right, and so then our other receptors are encapsulated. And so our Meissner's, if we remember, are much more superficial, even though they're slightly deep to our Merkel cells, and they are also going to detect light touch. And then our Pacinian corpuscle is much deeper in the skin and is going to detect really forceful pressure. All right, so you definitely want to remember these points on these different receptors. And I did post the model of the skin video last week, and so I'm just kind of pointing out some of these structures. So just review that because the model will be on your practical, but on your quiz, you'll need to know figure 16.1. And that's just a figure of the of the skin that looks like the model, but it's just a drawing. Okay, and so that will be on your quiz. You'll have to just kind of label a couple of things. So just make sure that you know that and that you take a look at that. All right. All right, so for this slide and for the next slide, I really encourage you to read through it and spend a little bit of time going over this, definitely before your quiz and before your practical, because it's really conceptual, and it's conceptual, but there's also like some step-by-step processes in it. And so you just want to make sure that you spend some time thinking through it before you get to the quiz and the practical. So first, we have what is called our muscle spindle. And so it's going to be monitoring our muscle position, right? And then we have some different fibers in here that I want to point out. We have our extrafusal and our intrafusal. You don't have to know this picture. This is just to kind of give you a visual, all right? Our intrafusal fibers are going to be inside of our extrafusal fibers, all right? And then we have these different types of neurons. So we have our alpha motor neurons and our gamma motor neurons. So our alpha motor neurons are going to be innervating or affecting our extrafusal fibers, and our gamma motor neurons are going to be innervating our intrafusal fibers. All right, and so our intrafusal and extrafusal fibers have some kind of some different functions. And so this is, you know, again, a slide you want to just spend a little bit of time going. All right, so our sensory neurons, or our afferent neurons, are going to be continually sending impulses back to the central nervous system, which is then going to send responses to those extrafusal fibers by those alpha motor neurons. All right, so let's look at muscle contraction and relaxation. So when our muscle is contracted, that means the spindle is going to be compressed and frequency of impulses is going to slow down. So because fewer impulses will be sent to the alpha motor neurons, those skeletal muscles will then relax. Okay, so then when our muscle's relaxed, the spindle is stretched. And then when it's stretched, that frequency is going to increase. Okay, so we have more signals being sent. And when there are more signals sent to the alpha motor neurons, then the skeletal muscles will contract. All right. So we then have the willful muscle contraction. That's going to be done by our gamma motor neurons. And so our brain is going to send impulses to those gamma motor neurons to contract those intrafusal fibers, which is going to help to relieve compression of the muscle spindle. Okay. So again, just spend some time going over that. Okay, so just a few kind of points on our receptors and things that we want to know. All right, our receptors can also be called transducers because they are converting different stimuli to action potentials. And these action potentials are going to be kind of categorized and distinguished based on where they're going in the brain. And so where they're going in the brain is going to mean that they are doing different things, okay, based on that location. So let's look at our receptor fields. So these are just going to be areas where we're going to have lots of receptors. And so when we have smaller and more dense receptor fields, that means that area on the body, that area on the skin is going to be much more sensitive. Okay, so examples of that are going to be the hands, feet, face, and genitals. And when we look at stimuli and there's some type of constant stimulus, so we can become desensitized to that, which means that we may not feel that, or we may not think about it, and that's called adaptation. So for example, I have a scrunchie like on my wrist right now. I like have one on all the time, just in case I need to put my hair up, but it's also like a cute accessory. So you know, you may like first put your scrunchie on and then you like feel that on your wrist, but as you go throughout your day, like you don't think about it, and you're not like consciously like feeling the scrunchie like on your wrist. And so that would be adaptation. Okay. And so lastly, we have what's called the 2-point discrimination test. Again, this would be something that you would be doing if you were in lab. This would be an activity that you'd be doing. And so I'll just describe the activity for you and then kind of tell you what I want you to know. So for the activity, you would be in your group, and one person would be like the test subject, I guess. And the other person would have like 2 toothpicks and would be poking that person like on the skin, kind of close together. And so each time you'd want to say like if you felt 2 pokes or 1, because when looking at the receptor fields, the closer the pokes would get, they would get to a point where you would just feel 1 poke. And so that's the 2-point discrimination test. All right, but the purpose of that, and this is what you want to know, so write this down, is that it is going to be measuring the density of receptor fields. All right, so measuring the density of receptor fields. Okay, and these are the different reflexes that you need to know. This is not on your PowerPoint, okay, but these are all going to be in your book in exercise 15, I think. Yes, exercise 15, these would be the activities that you'd be doing if you were in class. You'd be kind of looking at these. And so what I want you to kind of know is just kind of the general like process of these and kind of what the goal is. So for example, with the plantar reflex, if there is a specific response, and I'll let you look at this up. If there's a specific response, then that means that it would be an indication of a spinal cord injury in the patient. Okay, so that's in your book. Definitely look that up. But then another example, the pupillary light reflex. So for that, there would be a light shown in the patient's eye. They would follow the light, but their pupils would also dilate to let that light in. Okay, so again, just please go over these and make sure that you understand some of these reflexes. So I know some people don't have their books, and so if that's the case, then I'd maybe ask a friend if they can like send you a picture. If I can find some really good videos on them, I'll try to post them. Okay, but do not rely on that. Okay, rely on what's in the book. All right, and so as far as your quiz, I'm going to be posting that up on Blackboard later today, and then you can, just do that at any time. Okay, but just remember it's due by Sunday. And let's see, I think that's it for the lecture part. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and stop recording. Okay, and then y'all can ask me any questions that you have.